So, our fifth chapter is about the mass media and the public sphere. Mass media, as you all know, is the audience that watches the media, which is basically either a newspaper or a magazine or a television or a radio or social media or internet and anything that is basically the part of media. The public sphere is basically a bubble, or you can say like a dome or a pod, which surrounds those public, those audiences which are bounded or which are, you can say, sort of media savvy, who work, who whose life entirely based on watching the media and deciding and taking decisions from watching the media. So we'll see everything in detail about the mass media and the public sphere in this chapter, basically. Now, those of us in Western industrialized cultures live in multimedia environment in which mechanical and electronic images, text, and sound are an almost constant presence. So, as I told you, people who are constantly media savvy, who lives in media, multimedia environment, who watches media all the time. Mostly uh, in this era, nowadays, people do that often. They usually prefer to watch media on time to time to get news, to make decisions, and different other things. So, the term mass media has been used to define those media designed to reach large audiences perceived to have shared interests. So, mass media, as I told you before, is like those audiences who watches different sort of media, and then they share thoughts with each other based on what they have seen in the media. So the mass media refers to forms and text that work in unison to generate specific dominant or popular representation of events, people, and places. Now, some critics of the media have argued that radio and television largely control the exchange of information by restricting authorship of, information to those with access to means of media production. Nowadays things are a little bit changed, but if we take a look at uh, past media that was highly based on television viewership and radio like kind of listening. At that time, m- there was a huge argument that most of our decisions or our idea or the ideology comes from watching the television, the news or talk shows or those kind of things, and listening to the radio where you have the news and other stuff that comes on like radio that are like broadcasted on radio. So those things had a high impact on audiences, on those who listen and watch. And this produces an easy access to gain like viewership and to gain the listeners. So this is how things used to work in the past. Still it works, but now we have some other medias also, like internet we have, social media we have, which is becoming more prominent than the television, or we say the radio. Now there are like phenomenological differences in the way that we experience media that are particular to their material quality. So we have studied about the phenomenology in the last chapter. So if we take a look at the television and a radio, so basically there are phenomenological differences. So how do we experience these differences? We experience these differences with the quality of material that we see on the television or we hear on the radio. Sometimes it seems so real, so true that we believe in it. And that's completely based on the quality of the material that has been showed or broadcasted. If something is not that clear, it's not that convincing, so we don't really think it is true, or we don't really feel that what we are listening to or watching is real. But if the quality of those materials are really convincing, it makes people to believe in that. Now, it can be argued that the term mass media is no longer entirely applicable. As I told you, we have now users instead of mass media audiences. We have now users, or we have things which are like more technical nowadays, like social media and internet and those kind of things. As more diverse media forms emerge, such as cable television, internet, social media, more fragmented audience form to replace the undifferentiated mass, and the mass media are less pervasive. So now audiences are a little bit changing because we are moving from television, radio to other medias also. For example, we are moving to internet, we are moving to social media, and we are becoming a completely different sort of audience. So let's see the critics of the mass media. The historical critic that states that TV and radio provide a centralized means for mobilizing the new mass culture or mass society around a unified set of issues and ideas. So TV and radio was basically used as, uh, you can say, viewership and for listeners. And the target was to convince people through these channels. Now, it was also used for like mobilizing a mass culture, like a completely, you can say, a media, like a medium or a vehicle that can target as many people as they can. And it happened. People who watched television, listened to the radio, they they believed in that, and through that, their ideology was maintained. Their ideology was like created. So let's talk about now the current critics. The current critics of the mass media argue that the new electronic technology are powerful new tools for propaganda or mass persuasion. Things are same, but the mediums are changing. In historical critic, people used to say TV and radio was something that was creating propaganda, but nowadays it is becoming more technological. Things are becoming like more electronical, like internet, or you can say social media. But things are same. The target is same, to create propaganda through these mediums. And nowadays it is becoming more easier to do that because information nowadays travels much more faster than it used to be in the past. So these critiques see viewers as passive, if not gullible recipients of media messages. So now, how the critiques see like the mass audiences nowadays, they see them as, if we are not like gullible like recipients, so in other words, we are passive. We just see and we believe in that, but we don't interact with it, and we don't become active. We don't activate ourselves, or we don't take a step ahead, or we don't react what we see and or what we listen. So the concept of a narcotic effect refers to the way that time spent with the media replaces actual participation in organized action. This is called a narcotic effect. A narcotic effect is the effect when people look at the things, see the things, believe them, and don't react with it. It's the effect that is basically producing one way theory, which is producing one way recognition. So we don't get an outcome, we just get an input, we don't get an output out of it. So the mass media in this concept is understood as convincing people that being informed about a social issue by seeing it covered in the media is the same as doing something about it. So, what actually is happening is that this concept is rather than convincing us, then re- uh, uh, like making us to react. We don't get reaction out of it. We just see it and believe it, because this is how things are shown to us. This is basically a narcotic effect where we just see things, believe it, and then just don't react it. It is basically a passive concept. It's a passive practice that nothing happens and nothing comes out of it. It remains like silence. Once we see it, we see it. We don't react after it. A group of culture critics known as the Frankfurt School describes the culture industry as an entity that both creates and caters to a mass public that tragically can no longer see the difference between the real world and the illusionary world that these popular media forms collectively generate. So, as you know, the Frankfurt School is basically they have a theory that now these sort of audiences, when they watch, listen, they don't react after it, and when they don't react after it, what does this mean? This means there is no differences in believing it as a true or or a false. So there is no difference between a real world and an illusionary world. Both sides are same to these audiences, and hence and because they don't uh, react, they tend to believe everything as real, and this helps the like the broadcasters and the productions houses and those who generates the news or broadcast the real news or generates the false news. They take advantage of it. So in their view, the culture industry generates false consciousness among its customers, encouraging the masses to buy mindlessly into the ideologies that allow industrial capitalism to thrive. So, according to the Frankfurt School, what is happening is that as people are believing in everything they see, it is becoming easier for the newsmakers to create ideologies among us easily. And this allows the industrial capitalism to thrive, to grow more and more. So, this is also a Marxist view of ideology. If you have read about the Marxism, so this is all about how the Marxism work is it works with the with a certain sort of an ideology, and this is the ideology that has been created nowadays by making us believe that what we are watching is nothing but true, no matter how false it is, and no matter uh, how you can say believable, like more like believable it is. As we don't react, we don't research, we simply believe, and things goes on. And from one person to another person, the news travels as faster as it can travel. Now, let's see the mass media and the democratic potential. In democracy, how the mass media works and how it affects how the mass media affects the democracy. So another view of the mass media is that it is promising tools for democratic ideals, which will promote an open flow of information and exchange of ideas. So this view challenges the very idea of mass media or mass society. Now, in a few times back, when people were uh, under like a sort of a democracy, or maybe in some countries there were protests, they were not with the democracy, they were against the democracy. There the mass media was playing a vital role, either convincing them to believe in the democracy, or not to believe and standing against the democracy. So, this view challenges the very idea of mass media or mass society. It stresses the potential of individual media forms for the development of community and identity on a much smaller scale. So, let's take an example of few incidents that happened back at the time, how things um, uh, were changed due to the mass media. Uh, let's see what as a as a technological part. So a technologically more like determinist way of viewing media implies that content is not as important as the media through which you receive it. So one thing that we don't look at, or sometimes these topics are overshadowed, when we see that when we are receiving the content, we just look at the content, but we ignore from where the content is coming. If you take a closer look, so you will see that if we uh, trace back, investigate, research on the content producer side, a side where we can find out from where the content is coming, we can gain more knowledge and we can easily identify whether what we are watching or listening is true or not. So that's one thing. So as subconsciously we have started to believe the news, our minds automatically focuses on the content rather than the source of the content. So source of the content is much more important than the content itself. Canadian communication theorist Marshall McLuhan argued in the 1950s and 1970s that media technologies give greater potential for power to our individuals' bodies by extending our sense, thereby extending our power in the world. So, how do these media industry gains power? They gain power by controlling our senses. So, by controlling our senses, making us believe in what they want us to believe in, they gain power. And when they gain power, they tend to control us more and more. So, to put the means of media production in the hands of ordinary citizens, they would be empowered rather than being molded. So, instead of changing our perception, changing our ideas, molding our ideas, they are empowering the citizen by giving them idea that whatever they're sensing, whatever news they're listening, they hold their own like perception, and what they are believing is true. So when people start to believe that, their own power of thinking, their own power of uh, like like decision making, or you can say our own like conscience are becoming weaker and weaker. Now, let's move to the television and the question of sponsorship. Now, this is a little bit uh, a sort of more critical, and as well like as it isn't still like common nowadays. Consumers watch television programs primarily to see programs. But what keeps television afloat is the viewer's not so incidental exposure to advertisements for products. Now, how the television works, how the television, like TV shows, talk shows, news, or series, or seasons, or whatever you watch on television runs, they run on sponsorships. But when we watch the television, we don't take those advertisements under consideration. We are more excited to watch the show rather than finding out who sponsored it. Sometimes we don't look at the ads, the advertisements. So, how the television survive with this sort of thinking? How still it's pushing the sponsorship and how it's pulling us in the sponsorship? So, in US television's early years, product endorsements were enmeshed with programming itself, making it difficult to separate the product from the program. So, in early days, the like television shows in US, they were endorsed by some of the sponsorship, and they became the part of that sponsorship, and it was really hard to uh, rip them apart. They were all together, and they run from from beginning to till the end with that endorsement. And once something is attached to it and you're watching it, automatically that part which is attached also becomes little important for the viewers. For example, you're watching a talk show, and the talk show starts with a advertisement of, for example, a, a stationary item. And all the time when it starts with that item, and that becomes the part of that program. And if you like that program, if you're gaining a viewership of that program, what you are doing is that you're also becoming the part of that product. And maybe somehow, if you will go and buy that any sort of stationery item, you will always make sure that you are buying that brand because you have connected yourself to that brand. Now, some Western countries such as Canada, England, France, and Germany have opted for state controlled television, in which the government plays a more active role in the industry and programming. Now, in some of the Western countries, all like most of the channels are state controlled television shows, they are not private. So, when things are state controlled, the government are in hold and they are the one who can control everything. What they want the viewers to see, what they want the listener to listen. So meanwhile, US television is shaped by free market forces, which relies on corporate sponsorship and advertising. But in usually in US, things are a little different because in US they much more rely on sponsorship and advertising. So advertising agencies and sponsorships in the US are more controllers. They are known as the more powerful controllers rather than the government, or you can see like states as like themselves. So let's have a look at the public sphere now, what the public sphere is, and how the public sphere works, and how it relates with the media. So, a public sphere is ideally a space where citizens come together to debate and discuss the pressing issues of their society. So, just like I like told you before, it's like a pod, it's like a sphere, it's like a dome where all the viewers comes together and share their thoughts of what they have seen and what they are watching on or what they are listening, and they share the ideas, they debate the ideas, and those all things. So in events such as assassination of John F. Kennedy, the funeral of Princess Diana, and attacks of September 11, 2001. The media served to create a sense of community at local, national, and global levels. So these incidents are considered to be one of the most important events, and these important events created a public sphere where people used to come and join and start speaking up about it, debating about it. Now let's see in real what public sphere is. So you will get more idea what do the public sphere means. You already know what it is, but you have never seen it like this before. But once I will go to the next slide, you will get the idea of what the public sphere actually means. Now, if you will see here, just look at these three pictures and you will get the idea of what the public sphere is. The television talk shows creates a forum for contemporary issues and thus promotes the formation of public spheres. So when you watch these talk shows on the news channel, you see two people debating on a topic, speaking about some topic, speaking something about some issues. And when they're speaking that in a certain environment, in a certain location, that environment is known as the public sphere. Who is the audience of this genre? Those people who are targeted by the media, who goes with the media, who believes in today's media. And then when they watch that two people have different views, different than what they have seen. Like suppose I have this news channel here, uh, two people talking about an issue, and one person is talking about something that matches my views, and other person is talking about a different sort of view that doesn't match my views. So when I'm look watching both of them talking to each other, debating over a topic, it creates an interesting uh, thing for me. So that part becomes a like public sphere. So it becomes interesting for me that how things can be different than what I'm believing. Different people have different sort of ideas. Usually, in news talk shows, you have that. You have people invited to late night shows. You have other sort of like social issues talk shows. So you have different sort of things that you make it like when you watch them, you get different ideas that okay, out of the box, these things can be common too. These things can be true too. Some critics have faulted the media for sensationalizing events involving stars and notorious individuals over important global news, such as wars, famine, and international politics. So, usually, some of the news they become sensational uh, on purpose or genuinely. It can be anything. And sometimes you take different sort of people from the media. They can be film actors, they can be politicians, they can be anyone, and they become notorious in spreading some global news. Okay, maybe a politician can be you can say uh, become gullible for wars. He can be gullible for like famine in country, like suppose in Africa. So like it's for years still now we hear the news. Okay, and international politics. So all these things we have we have. So sometimes sensational news is created rather than being truthful, it is created to gain audiences. So this is done by most of the news channel. On purpose, they are created falsely, or maybe sometimes it is real, but most of the time it is created to make it look more sensational, so to gain more viewership. The status of media in contemporary culture is contradictory and mixed. So nowadays it's uh, like, as we are in the world of social media, internet, and different other mediums, we have different sort of people. We have different sort of mass audiences. We are uh, like one those believe, and we have those who contradicts what they are watching, or sometimes we are not the one who are believing. So we have contradictory audiences, we have mixed audience. So it is diverse at both the levels of the media themselves and at the level of national and cultural bondage. So this is uh, what constitutes a medium. So what we see, sometimes we do believe, but sometimes if we have a greater research, we have a greater potential of tracing back, looking at the source, finding out what is true or not, then it's based on our our investigation and finding out what is true or what is not true. So both kind of people, mass audiences exist in today's new media cultures. So new media culture is basically uh, harder to for the productions houses and also for the mass audiences. It is hard for them to convince people, and it is hard for people in finding out what is true or what is false. So nowadays things are a bit more trickier than it used to be in the past time. So this is all about the mass media and the public sphere. And anyone who have any question regarding this chapter, any questions so far? Okay. So, like this is the chapter 5. Next class, we will move to the sixth chapter, which is basically consumer culture and the manufacturing of desire. And we'll see in detail what this chapter is all about. Now, some of the students who were doing assignments and assignment number 2, they were asking me how they can juxtapose two images together side by side. So actually, you don't have to put two images side by side. You can upload them separately also, or you can put one on a different page of Microsoft Word and other one on the different page of Microsoft Word. So it's totally up to you. The only thing is that you have to find an existing advertisement of anything, and then that will be your original advertisement that you have to upload. Also, once you have that advertisement, you have to mock that advertisement, you have to criticize that advertisement, and that part will be your culture jamming part. So that will be the subvertisement, that will be the like the second part. The same advertisement original you have to mock and on a different image. You can take that image, change it a little bit, change the slogan, add some picture to it, do something with that picture so it looks like a criticism of that original. So both images, then you have to upload the original one and the criticized one. So this is the whole process of the culture jamming, basically. So I have also showed you different examples before. This is how it will be it should be done. Okay. So any questions so far? Is everything clear? Okay. So let's meet in the next class, and we'll continue from there. And those who have not done yet the assignments, or they have not uploaded the assignment yet, so you can upload it as soon as possible before your third assignments comes in the way. Okay. So take care, everyone, and we'll meet in the next class.